The dawn of civilization. Primitive. Dangerous. Exciting. The handwriting is on the wall. If the human race is ever going to amount to anything, it needs
the most civilized caveman I have ever seen.
Look who's come out of his cave.
Hey everyone, Jarrad here for Cave Dweller Music, and I'm really excited to be presenting this episode of our podcast, where I'll be catching up with Mark from Kink Guitar Pedals. Kink have been operating out of Melbourne, Australia for 6 years now, and have done fantastic work making pedals aimed at those of us who love their music heavy. Thanks for joining us. Let's get into it. So for this episode of the Cave Dweller Music Podcast, I have Mark with me from Kink Guitar Pedals. Hey Mark, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Mark. I'm very good, thanks. So just a bit of an introduction, Mark. You've been building pedals for, that I know of, what's it been, like maybe 5-6 years now that you've been?
It'll be 6 years in February. So I think the middle of Feb will be my sixth birthday with the company. So, you know, it seems like an eternity ago, but it hasn't really been that long in the scope of things. So
yeah,
6 years.
It seems like you've managed in the 6 years to get quite a lot done. I mean, you've gone from, I remember when I first saw the Charlie Fuzz come out, you've now got, what is it, like around 10 or more pedals that you make?
I think 12 to 14, and I've got some that I sort of haven't launched yet that will hopefully be this month coming out. But yeah, there's been some that haven't lasted, haven't stood the test of time, and some that'll probably still drop off. But yeah, around that over 10 now, and then continuing to build. So that's good.
Yeah. Just a bit of a warning for our listeners too that this is going to get quite nerdy, this episode. So if you're a guitarist, you're probably going to love it. If you're not a guitarist and you're just interested in how people make their music, stick around and find out a bit more. For any of the guitarists that are listening, I'm sure, like me, you'll understand how much of an obsession this can become, and how, whether you use one pedal or whether you use 20 pedals, they're such a big part of how musicians have created iconic sounds over the years. And we're definitely going to be digging a bit more into that. So do you want to give us a bit of a brief history, Mark, on how Kink started, how you got into building pedals, and any sort of you want to give us?
Yeah, well, that's funny you mentioned the Charlie Fuzz was the first pedal that I ever bought out, and I initially going back to 2017, I was a pedal whore, and have been for a very long time. I had the full collection of the Strymon pedals, and I was playing in a sort of a post rock instrumental band, and so I'd been through tons of pedals, and I decided that enough was enough, and jumped on YouTube and ended up finding DIY guitar pedals, and looked at some of his just Paul's videos, and I thought, well, I could probably do this. And I made a bass fuzz that has, I think it's got like 6 or 7 components, and got it working, and was totally blown away by how massive the sound was. So I reached out, I asked some people, because I don't come from a background of electrical engineering or anything like that. I'm 100% a retailer, a business person. So I've never done that stuff before. So I reached out, asked some questions, and designed the circuit based on the color sounds, one knob fuzz. Initially I made it for myself, and I posted it on a Facebook group, the Charlie Fuzz, and the response was it was kind of mixed. I mean, there was a lot of people that were not happy, obviously, because of the subject matter. But I mean, I had a lot of comments just saying, "Look, you've got to sell it. I'd buy one 100%."
Just a bit of a heads up for those where this is obviously a podcast. Me and Mark are talking via video, but the Charlie Fuzz, jump online and look it up. It's quite unique. So it's essentially a small one knob fuzz pedal that features the face of Charlie Manson, and his eyes light up when it's turned on.
Yeah. And look, it's to give you some context, I've always sort of been into horror and that sort of thing, and serial killers and that stuff. And in all honesty, it was 100% an accident. I was trawling through, just looking for a way to add some artwork, and I thought, that fits really well. The knob fits really well. The eyes will look magnificent in it, and yeah, I made it. So I pretty much had no hesitation. It was kind of weird. I'd never opened a business before. I'd never really done anything like that. So I think I made like 14 or 15, and they sold really quick. And then I was like, well, this is pretty cool. I can do this stuff, and I can make pedals that I want to make and that I would have on my board without having to spend, hundreds and hundreds of dollars, buying pedals. So it was all sort of happened since then.
So not having a background in any sort of electronic stuff, did you find that it was really sort of diving off the deep end and taking it sort of one step at a time, or did you have any sort of knowledge about what you were doing?
Mate, I had nothing at all. Like, I didn't know what a capacitor was. I didn't know what a resistor was. I had a soldering iron, I think, that I got from like Mitre 10 or something that was nowhere near hot enough. I've still got my first ever pedal that I made. I've still got, and I open it up and have a look and sort of shudder at how bad and horrendous it looks. But I had no background at all. But I have invested a lot of time in, like I said before, I invested time in studying. I've read a lot of theory books on electrical stuff, and I'm lucky enough to have a few friends in the business who are electrical engineers who can sort of help out with the difficult questions that I'll come across. But I think the thing that was good is I just jumped straight in. So I made tons of mistakes. I've got so many circuit boards and so many, projects that just ended up in the bin that never made it anywhere. And some that have been in process for like 3 years, I've got a delay pedal that's been in process for 3 years and I've been sort of, back and forward with. But yeah, no background at all. I would like to do it. I looked into doing it. I looked into doing some form of electrical engineering, and I wouldn't be able to run a business because it'd be pretty well full time. So
yeah, awesome. And at the moment, it's just you making the pedals?
Yeah, it's just me. So I tried to get my oldest son on board. He's getting there. It's hard when you're selling stuff because I kind of want it to be perfect, and he is kind of like, yeah, it's all right, like it'll do. So, I find myself going over the stuff that he's already done. But, he, the family helps out with, organizing all of the boxes and packaging and stuff like that. But as far as, design, getting the boards made, making the boards, drilling, printing, all of that stuff, driving all of the enclosures to the power decoder. Locally, I do all of that stuff. So there's a lot of time that's gone into it, but I have been able to streamline it as I've gone along. So initially, the Charlie fuzzers were done using water slide decals that were incredibly time consuming. Then I'd have to spray clear coat over them, and all of that sort of stuff has evolved to streamline the process. So I can. Interestingly enough, that the simplest pedal is the Charlie fuzz, but it takes me the longest to make out of every pedal in the range that I've got, because it's just there's a lot more manual stuff to it, whereas a lot of the newer pedals are streamlined and designed in a way that they can be replicated quite quickly.
Awesome. So when you're building or when you're planning on bringing out a new pedal or something like that, are you sitting down going through a list of influences and sort of saying, well, I like the sound of this, or I don't like the sound of that, or I like this, but I'd like to change that? Or are you at the point now where you've sort of got enough, or you've had enough experience in the industry that you're starting to make things from scratch?
Yeah, so I have done a lot of clones, and I think with a lot of pedal building, there's building blocks that are taken from pedals that have been around since the 60s, and they're just elaborated on and developed as people go. So I have started sort of working from scratch. I'm in the process of working on something that emulates an Engel amplifier at the moment, and I'm sort of breadboarding that and getting used to tuning the effect a whole lot better than what it was. But I will generally look at what sound or what I hear. So if I hear a doom band or 60s, like Hendrix or something, and I like a guitar sound, I'll generally jump online and sort of suss out what they were using, and then try and build upon that, and add my own little touches as I go along. So if I don't like how much gain it has, I can sort of tune it to not be so gainy, or vice versa, or change the tone, to work better with a humbucking guitar versus a single coil guitar. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm kind of working towards now without sort of necessarily just cloning stuff, which is quite good. And I think I had to do the hard yards doing that cloning to really get an understanding of what's involved, and how all of that stuff affects the overall design of the pedal.
Yeah. And I guess the thing too is, for anybody who collects pedals or spends their time sort of watching YouTube videos about pedals, people will definitely know that there's just an oversaturation of clones out there. So I guess it gets to the point where you need to start sort of doing your own thing to be a standout in the industry. Is that something that you've seen in your time? I mean, obviously, starting out small as a business, you need to create something that maybe people already have a bit of a feel for to get a foot in the door. But have you found that pretty quickly people get sick of that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think, to your point about the oversaturation is just crazy now. Like I looked back when I started in 2017, I think, there was myself, Dazatronics, Mostronics. There wasn't many builders. Sean Klinger was around building, and Tim up in Queensland. But now, we recently did a guitar pedal show at a pub in the city, and I think there was like 15 different builders there, and they're all doing stuff now that's phenomenal. With modulation circuits and throwing in, digital technology, and these are really young people sort of starting off in the industry. So I'm finding myself now that I've got these ideas in my head, and like, how do I articulate that to someone to help me design that, or how do I learn how to design that myself? I have no qualms about sort of outsourcing design, because in the end, I can't do everything myself, and I need to know my limitations when it comes to digital technology, and to get that evolution where things are different, you sort of have to look at that digital aspect of the business now. I mean, there's only, like you said, there's only so many analog fuzz pedals that are built off the basis from something in 1960 that you can do before people do start getting bored. And I think, the success that I've had is largely due to the fact that I've designed my pedals around the fact that I was a massive metalhead. And, the way I picked a lot of music when I was a young fella is I looked at the covers and I went, that's pretty sick, So I've kind of taken that philosophy when I design the pedals, to have a bit of fun and make them stand out. So, there's a bit of both, but I'm at the stage now where I know that I need to diversify, because these up and coming pedal builders, in Australia alone, are phenomenal. So if I don't start evolving, I'm just going to get stuck. I'm not going to be able to sort of build the business, and I don't want this to be a fleeting experience. I want it to be something that, I can build the brand and work on merch, and, and have a brand more so than just making pedals. So there's a lot that I have in my mind that I want to achieve. And, to your point, I can't be stagnant. I can't just replicate the stuff that's always been done.
I think one of the things that I definitely noticed straight away when I first saw Kink pedals, and a few of my friends mentioned it as well, and I think it's been one of the things that sort of helped you stand apart from the others, is the fact that you had kind of leaned into the more metal side of things with your branding and your artwork, and just even sort of the slogans that you use, the names of your pedals. Do you want to give us a bit of a background on that? I'll put some links up when this podcast goes out, so people can have a look for themselves. But I mean, you've got one pedal with a horseman who's cracked out from some sort of bender, and then you've got the Russian plague, which is a skull with a rat in it. You've got all this sort of crazy artwork that's definitely down the doom and metal sort of pathway. Do you want to fill us in on that?
Yeah, so I'll give you a bit of a rundown on the evolution of some of the pedals. So I mentioned earlier that I was copping a bit of flack for the Charlie fuzz, and I'd done some other pedals that were kind of a little bit more full on than that, and copped a lot of grief, copped some personal emails where people sort of got a bit narky towards me. And
Was that about a certain cannibalistic serial killer?
No, but that one, yeah, that recent one was that copped a bit of shit as well. It was kind of not exciting, but I ended up meeting with I reached out to, I don't know, I don't even know how I come across Pascal, who's the local artist who does all my tattoos as well, Pascal de Braff. Hopefully I can send you the link so people can see some of his work. I met with him and I sort of said, look, I want something that is a bit of a screw you to these people who are kind of on their high horse. You know what I mean? So that's where the whole point of the high horse came from, was I just wanted it to sort of be a get stuffed, like I'm doing this, and freedom of speech and all of that sort of stuff. And the thing is, I've got an outlet now, so you guys can do whatever you want, but I'm going to come back and have a bit of fun with it. So the high horse just came about as me just a bit of a piss take, going, well, you guys just seriously need to get off your high horses and, focus on something that actually means something, like not the fact that someone's expressing their art form in a way that you don't like, And I reached out. I've been very lucky. I mean, I've got a really good circle of people around me who've gave me leads and really helped me out. Pascal's been phenomenal in sort of, suggesting that I reach out to certain bands and other artists and all this sort of stuff for collaboration. And I was at a music shop one day and someone said you should contact this guy called Maggot Meister, who's in Europe, and he did the artwork for the Russian plague. And essentially I wanted to have something that, the Russian plague, for example, I just wanted to have something that was kind of like a Chernobyl in the background with a mutated rat, because it was based on a Civil War big muff and a rat pedal. So I kind of wanted to have a bit of fun with that. But, the Defender of the Hate came from an anal C-bomb album, because I was really into my grindcore, and I kind of liked the idea that, I'm Defender of the Hate, because I was copping a lot of flack in sort of 2017, 2018. I had people email me at work, on my work email. They sort of went to the stage where they tracked me down, and, I was getting called a misogynist, and, it was bad. So, but I was lucky because I could have just given up and gone, well, this is all a bit too hard, but I just sort of persevered. And, the Atomic Spaghetti is probably my most mellow pedal I've got, but I kind of dig it because it was just, I couldn't have too much fun with the artwork, but the name sort of is funny, so
yeah.
Everything, I think I put a lot of, I spent a lot of time trying to make, the stab zone was based off of fab tone, so I tried to find all these rhyming words, and then I sort of went with the artwork from that. So yeah, I kind of, this is the only real outlet I have now. I don't play in a band anymore, so this is my artistic outlet, and it helps me get my personality out, somewhere where I can not have everything bottled up. So
I'm sure I'm sure it sort of helped as well, the fact that the designs on your pedals, they look like the covers of metal albums. It looks like something that, like you said, a teenager would pick it up and go, fuck me, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's what I took the stab zone down to Deluxe when I first made it, and I gave him a bit of play, and it was funny because one of the dudes there playing it was like, I don't really care what it sounds like, but I'm gonna fucking buy it. Like my 12-year-old self would have bought this, you know what I mean? Because it had to do with the knife. So you're right. It's just and that's where a lot of my influence comes from that kind of, particularly the 90s sort of death metal and thrash metal album covers where it's, skulls and all that sort of stuff. But, it's evolving now, I can sort of add a little bit more tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff, and and I kind of have to evolve as well. Like I'm not sure if you know, but the Atomic Spaghetti was an evolution of the old Tremendous Game that I had, which was the similar circuit, but had a zombie holding his own heart and this sort of stuff, and it just didn't do well. Like, because I think people, it didn't really fit the sound of the pedal, and people might have been expecting something a little bit more full on, but it's an overdrive with a tremolo. So I had to go with that kind of Western thing, and I'll generally play them when I make them and go, well, what does it make me play? And as soon as I played that pedal, I was playing spaghetti Western stuff, cranking the reverb up on the amp, and finding myself going down that path. So that's what it had to be.
So what have been some of your proudest moments so far? I mean, you've like I said earlier, you've managed to achieve quite a lot in the 6 years that you've been doing this. But what have been the standout sort of things, or the pinch yourself moments where you go, I'm actually a part of this now. I'm not just someone who's having a crack in their spare room.
Look, there's been a few. I mean, I was, again, through meeting people and reaching out online, but I ended up speaking with Hamish from Godfrey, who used to be was in My Own Bride, back in the day, and he's now using a Defender of the Hate and the Russian Plague. And it's going to be in the new God from Doom album, like that sort of stuff is going back. I was sort of listening to these guys going, well, that's phenomenal, right? I'll never be able to even speak to these people, and then I had the guys that managed the chats reach out to me and sort of wanted to do a collaboration with the chats, and that was huge as well. I mean, the chats were blowing up at that time, and the idea that I could collaborate with particularly with someone who had in excess of hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram was just insane to me.
Yeah.
And then then they reached out and suggested I do something with the Psychos, and the fact that I've got a signature Ross Knight pedal that the best part of that is Ross has given one to Eddie Vedder.
Yeah.
So the fact that Eddie Vedder's rocking has a dozer fuzz is just phenomenal to me. So
that's
that's great stuff.
For any of our international listeners there, Australians will obviously know who they are, but the chats have had some serious success overseas, and you're talking about the Cosmic Psychos, who are a much loved and rusted on Australian band. I think everybody's heard of them here, or anyone who's interested in rock and roll in any way would know who the Cosmic Psychos are.
Anyone who was around in the early '90s and went through the whole grunge thing probably has the Cosmic Psychos to thank for a lot of that stuff. So and I got to meet Ross, and it's just opened these doors that as a music lover and and pedal lover, I've got to meet these people that I would never have met, so that sort of stuff just blows me away, and I was at this pedal expo, and these younger builders that I was talking about that are phenomenal, that are bringing out stuff that I just wouldn't have thought about bringing out. I've gone over and sort of said, this is fantastic, and they're like, well, you're kind of like a legend. You know what I mean? And like that sort of blows me away. I don't know how to think about it, So the whole thing's a sort of a pinch yourself moment, I'm kind of in between that transition stage where I'm not quite there, but I'm getting close to being able to sort of hopefully survive purely on having the kink thing going on.
Have you found that I know from spending hours in guitar shops, working in guitar shops, watching a million YouTube videos, the guitar world seems to be sort of split almost into two very defined camps. There's the people who love tradition, the people who want to sound like the bands from the 60s and cap it there. Everything great happened then, everything new's bullshit. And then you've got the people who are willing to experiment, and that's, in my opinion, that's how music's advanced over the years. You've had the people that have gone, well, here's the box, I'm going to stand outside of it. When it comes to pedals in particular, it seems like there's very much people either in one of the two camps there. And I think that you've found yourself with the people that are looking to move forward and sort of get away from the stuffiness and the traditional, well, there's a tube screamer and there's a clon and there's a there's a blues breaker and that's it. That's all you need. So
Yeah, or there's no pedals at all and you play
There's
straight
no-
into your amp, and that's all you should. That's all you should have to do, because everyone can crank a 100-watt Marshall up and
Yeah.
be able to play that loud. But yeah,
down that sort of line of thinking, have you found or had any feedback from people that may have been in that other camp of the, liking the traditional, not really being willing to try anything new, but then found something of yours and surprised themselves? Or
yes and no. I mean, some of the success with that has been along the lines of the Femtor's probably been one of those pedals where, instead of having to spend $5,000 on a clon, or go down the route of getting a soul food or something like that, there's been quite a lot of people who have given it a chance, and the feedback that I've received is that it, that stacks up equally as well as any of the other clones that are out there.
yeah,
But as far as sort of moving away from tradition, I don't think those people are easy to persuade. Like, I think it's you've got to give props to the likes of Jack White and those guys who will evolve with that. And, I haven't sort of come across someone who, my pedals are essentially drive pedals, right? So, there's nothing that's incredibly evolutionary about that sort of stuff at this stage anyway. But there's a lot of stuff kicking in my head that I'd like to be able to move from my mind and put it into a pedal, and it's just sort of making that stuff work. But as far as people transitioning, I don't think so. But every time I see, like we were discussing prior, every time I see someone who's a genuine, playing muso. You're like, I was at the guitar show 3 years ago, and I had this gentleman come up who is a muso, who plays all the time, plays live all the time, played a stab zone, and was just blown away, and was like, I've got to go try other pedals. And I think he came back 3 times to play it, and ended up taking a stab zone away, and it loves it. So that sort of stuff where where the market is saturated, you've got your, EHX, the MXR, and all of those brands, Boss, that have been around forever, that have probably done all of this stuff, and someone's choosing a locally made Melbourne pedal. That sort of stuff is phenomenal. It probably always will be phenomenal. I don't think I'll ever lose sight of how important that is.
and speaking of just sort of being a local builder, you're now looking to branch out and head across to the States this year. You're going to head across to NAM and try and spread the word over there. What's the plans and goals for that?
Look, I think whilst I'm at NAM, I think the plan is to stay 100% sober, so I don't make an ass of myself for starters. But look, I want to get out and just meet some of these builders that totally blow me away. That are not only great builders that have forged a company that's now made it their bread and butter. So I'd like to be able to sort of find the best ways to evolve the business, but also find a distributor. I mean, ultimately, I was told by a local Melbourne distributor or an Aussie distributor that the Australian market is smaller than the New York market, and that stuff just blows my mind, right? Like I'm excited that I've super excited. I've got stores in Tassie and WA and South Australia and Melbourne that had my pedals, but being able to get into that American market would be phenomenal. So I've gone as far as to sort of lay the foundation with a company to look into manufacturing over in America as well, because quite simply the economy of scale that is going to be required to produce that many pedals is not going to be able to be done by one person. Yeah. And if you look at the cost of shipping and the investment of someone from the States, the warranty process, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of business talk that I need to have also over in NAM, as well as having fun and getting to see some of the other builders. It's definitely an opportunity for me to branch out and find out, what I can do for the business to make it successful. I mean, I come from a business background. I've always worked in business. I think that's one of the things that's been, I haven't had to hold back. Some other people have probably just gone, no, I can't make that next step, but I don't care. I've got to give it a crack, and if I don't give it a crack now, time's going to pass me by, and I'm going to be left with the what ifs. And I don't want to have those what ifs.
Just for anybody who doesn't know, NAMM is a massive music trade show. It's where all the brands from all around the world meet up and basically show off all their new gear. So that'll be exciting to be part of that, Mark.
I think it's the first real one since COVID as well. So I'm thinking it'll should be big.
Yeah. Is there any plans to potentially pop over to the European one as well, or is that just a little?
Look, I would
little
love
bit
to.
too
I mean,
far?
I saw Jamie from Earthquaker in Japan at a pedal convention over there. So if it gets to the stage where I can, financially support that, 100%, I'd be all over that. I mean, one of the markets that I'm not really big in is the Asian market, which is interesting, because Japanese are renowned for their Japanese guitars and, musicianship and liking that American culture. So I think there's a definite market over in that area. Europe, 100%. I mean, I sell a lot of stuff, to Germany and to the UK. So there's definitely opportunity to hit up all of those places. It's just a matter of being able to make that viable. And, as soon as it's viable, I won't stop. I think, it's finding that balance that I think has made me hold off, because I don't want to commit, and I don't want to necessarily have someone else building something that I've had 100% control over.
Yeah.
Because, not one pedal goes out the door without me being 100% satisfied with it. Relinquishing that responsibility is going to be quite hard either way.
And is there something new and exciting that you're working on at the moment? I know you were saying that you were sort of looking to branch out a little bit more and try some new stuff. Is there anything that you can share for this, or?
Yeah, look, I've got a delay pedal that I have been working on for a very, very long time. Being digital, there's a lot of compliance stuff that needs to be ticked off. It needs to be checked for electromagnetic interference, which comes at a significant cost. You're looking at sort of about $3,000 just to get that certified within Australia, to be able to sell it. And, if it's not certified and it doesn't work, you have to pay that money again to get it tested again. So the pedal's essentially done. It's just a matter of waiting till I've got the finances to release it. But that'll be it's a delay pedal, 3 different delays, all unique algorithms, track tempo, all the bells and whistles. But it's still a little way to go. There's a couple of bands that I'm sort of working with at the moment, to try and collaborate with them. Can't really say who they are because it hasn't come out yet, but one's quite a big Aussie metal band, which will be phenomenal. I've got a noise gate based on the Fortin Zoom that's I've been wanting to release for a while. That'll be out this month. The new Retribution fuzz, it's just waiting for a demo to come out, hopefully within the next week or so. Then that'll be released. I've got a Sabbath sort of influence pedal and another Marshall influence pedal. There's a lot of stuff I'm currently working on, but a lot of people are asking for for reverbs. Reverbs and delays are the big thing at the moment. So trying to find that to get those to work and to make them compete with the stuff that's coming out from the likes of I don't even know how to say it, the NUX or NUX. The stuff that they're bringing out is phenomenal, like their Atlantic pedal at $250 with a reverb and a delay. For me to produce something like that, you're probably looking at $400 to $500.
Yeah.
So it's finding that different, that what differentiates me from that brand, and I think, will people buy it? That's where I'm unsure of at the moment.
Well, I think there's always a bit of a cautious people doing their sort of homework when it comes to things like the NUX and some of those other brands that are coming out of China. I mean, they're making some fantastic stuff, but listening to some bigger name pedal builders talk about that stuff, they all sort of say, yeah, look, it is great stuff and it sounds great, but somewhere someone's cutting costs, and for you to be able to get all those features for $250, there's got to be you got to go into it with an understanding that you're getting what you pay for, and it may not last as long as a pedal that's made by a local builder or someone a bit more reputable. So is that something that you really have to think about going forward? Because I mean, being in the Australian market, we are so close to Asia. There's so much stuff that gets imported from Asia, and because it's so much cheaper than getting a lot of the US stuff here. And the turnover for pedals like that, you see so many in the shops. Is that something that's a bit of an issue for you going forward to try and work out how to stay viable in that market?
Yeah, well, it's kind of, there's a few things that stand out when it comes to that stuff is how do I, my pedals aren't very expensive in the scope of, that kind of quotation marks boutique kind of pedal thing. Like I've seen, one knob fuzzers in the UK sell for £120. We're looking at like close to $200, where, mine's 130, and one of the things I've sort of been cautioned against about rather is when speaking to distributors that, I've got to be cautious not to underprice my pedals as well, because if I underprice them too much, I start competing in that market.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the market I want to be in, is your K-Line and your NUX and all of those pedals. But, to your point before, they're everywhere in the shops because I think they turn over. They turn over significant numbers of them, probably at small margins, but they're turning over a lot of them. And there's this, their hands being forced to stock them. So I think I need to make my competitors the likes of Earthquaker Devices and, Keeley and, those builders and try and price my pedals around that because, I am starting to be more and more conscious that I don't want to undervalue what the pedals are, So, yeah, it's definitely something that comes into thought when I do put pricing on the pedals. And, I have no doubt that I've lost retailers because that's what they sell. They sell these Chinese-made pedals, and your large mass-produced pedals that come from Fender at the moment, and Morley are back into it as well. So it's just whatever it's been. TC Electronics have got a really cheap range of pedals that are hard to compete against. They're phenomenal pedals, So. Yeah, it's definitely something that's at the front of mind. Like, what do I do to make my pedals stand out? To make someone choose my pedals? And, in the shops where they are successful, the thing that makes them successful is the people that are in those shops get them in the hands of the people playing them and get them to play them. And they realize it's not just a gimmick, and they're well built, they feel solid, they sound great. And, it's worth spending that a bit extra cash to support someone local. Everything I try and keep as much local as I can. All my powder coating I could probably get, from China, where I get my enclosures from. But I keep it local. There's a guy in Dandenong who does it for me because, that stuff's important to me. I want to try and keep as much local as I can.
That's definitely a good way to be looking at things too. And I guess there's the, I know from working in a shop myself in the past, you get the people that they go to the Chinese stuff for a taste test. It's I'll buy one of these, I'll put it on my board for a little bit, I'll see whether I like that sound or not. So I guess if you can shuffle yourself into that market of being maybe the second step, once somebody knows what they like and what they want, and someone who's willing to do a bit more research into what they want, I guess that's a good spot to see yourself as well. And I guess that means that you don't have to sort of take a hit on pricing.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, it's very interesting because the bigger I get, the more followers I start to have on Instagram, the more people I speak to. Like I was in a shopping center and saw a dude wearing a Kink Guitar Pedals hat, and I sort of went up in my hoodie and went, "Hey man, what's going on?" And a lot of people I speak to when I sort of say, "Yeah, I run Kink Guitar Pedals," they're like, "Hey, I've heard of them." I'm like, "Well, why haven't you played it?" Like there's a lot of people have heard of the brand, but it's that next step of getting them to jump on to spend the cash, So that's hard. I mean, I'm trying to move to a model now that's less me sending out pedals one by one and more of a wholesale. So I need to take that stuff into account as well, that I'm losing 30% of what I would get if I was to sell it direct. So, that has to come into play when I'm pricing as well. But I've got to make sure that I can cover that even with the margins that are going into the shops, So
All right. Well,
yeah.
I've sort of managed to turn this into a bit of an economics forum. So let's shift back to music. Obviously, you got into this game because you love music. What are the bands that you love? What are the things that drew you to getting into a life around music?
I think initially when I started really getting into investing in pedals, I was listening to a lot of Explosions in the Sky and a lot of post rock at that time, like Mogwai, and that sort of got me into the ambient stuff of the reverb pedals. I've had tons of reverb pedals, tons of delay pedals. Distortion. I've been a massive metal fan forever, and I haven't spent thousands of dollars on amp heads for the real metal amp. So every sound I get runs into a clean amp with a pedal. So, I've starting back in the day, I had death metal pedals from DOD. I had the grunge pedal. And, looking back, it was kind of laughable to have that stuff. But now I've rebought them again at a significantly inflated price because they're not around anymore. And they're sort of hard to come by. But they're phenomenal. They're phenomenal. You just got to know how to use them. And, I think back in the day, it was like crank the treble back all the way, the bass all the way up, and distortion all the way up, and that's your sound. And it's just not the right way to use it. So one of the benefits of, I guess, getting into this sort of thing is I kind of know that stuff now. And I've gone back to, you can't really see it in the video, but collecting all 90s distortion pedals, like from Boss and from DOD and Maxon and all of that sort of stuff, because that's the sound that initially got me into playing guitar. I was never really a massive Doom fan. I've listened to Sabbath forever and, listened to a lot of Doom, but I've only recently got into that real doomy sort of fuzz, octave fuzz, that sort of thing, in the last, since I started building pedals. I've begun a rat addiction, and I've bought nearly every rat that I can possibly buy and every rat clone because I still think it's one of the best pedals that's ever been made. Yeah, but I mean, I love all types of music, but I like music that is music and that has that musicality, and you can tell that people are experimenting. They're doing different stuff, and all the way from Slayer to death metal stuff. Like I love Kerry King sounds. I'd love to be able to emulate a pedal that can get that sound. I love the early 90s autopsy sound. I went as far as emailing the band and said, what were you using on the Severed Survival album, because I want to make a pedal that kind of emulates that sort of stuff. So, I'm kind of living my youth vicariously through a mid-40s body now, but I wish I was savvy enough back in the day to start doing it then and not wait till I was in my 40s to do it.
Has it changed the way that you listen to music now? You've got a bit of an insight into it. I know in the past, sort of working and talking to guys in music shops, and you'll be listening to a song with them and they'll just be picking apart every sound in it and going, oh, he's using one of these and this is that pickup. And, has it changed your experience that you're now listening more sharply to try and go, oh, that's that's an octave fuzz there, and around this point there, he's stepping on this, or
look, it's definitely adding a lot more. Like I was totally blasé with that stuff. It's kind of like my guitar picks now. I don't care what guitar pick I've got as long as it's not my 0.2 millimeter floppy one. It's to that sort of thing. There's people who are phenomenal with guitar and really into guitar that have to play a certain pick. I'm kind of, I get that now. Like I am 100% like that. I'll listen to it and go, well, shit, what are they doing to get that sound? Is it just a cranked Sun amp, or are they running a pedal into it, or that sort of stuff? And that drives me down the rabbit hole of jumping online and going, what's such and such using for this, and it's never ending now. It's a never ending search for how do people get this sound, and it kind of blows you away when you go, well, listened to Entombed, and they just cranked all the knobs up and sort of single-handedly created a genre. Like that sort of stuff wouldn't have happened without a guitar pedal.
Yeah.
I don't think some people, particularly people who don't play guitar, understand. Like I still have to explain what a guitar pedal does to people who don't play, and I'm like, shit, I don't know. It just makes different sounds. Like it's a hard thing to explain to someone who isn't sort of musically inclined to understand that.
Has it ruined the way that you play guitar? I know there's so many people who go down the rabbit hole. It's become so much of an obsession now that it's hard to just plug in a guitar and play. And I know from myself and friends and stuff like that, you'll start playing and then you go, oh, what if I do this and what if I do that? And it's never the same. You'll never sit down and just have the same thing twice. Have you now completely driven yourself mad in your playing experience?
100%. Look, the only time I ever play normally now is when I'm testing a certain pedal. So I've got my standard go-to. So if I'm testing Australia Drive, I'll play Slayer, because it's kind of got that Marshall sound. Or if I'm testing the Atomic Spaghetti, I'll play some Western stuff. But apart from that, I've got a box of pedals that are just sitting here, and I spend hours on the pedal board planner with a Pedal Train Pro going, shit, what do I need? Or what do I don't need? Am I going to use this more than once? Am I not going to use it? Like I've got a Boss ES8 switcher, which enables me to switch pedal orders and all this other stuff that just sent me mental, but I'm not sure if it was good for my creativity, because I've got a mate who will usually just plug one pedal into a guitar and he'll jam for hours. Yeah. Whereas I don't tend to do that. So it's I think it's kind of ruined me as a player, because it influences what I play. I can't plug an overdrive in and play metal. I can't play a fuzz in and play, like a lot of classic, rock stuff. So it's it's definitely had a I don't know if it's negative, but it's had an influence for sure on how I look at stuff, and and how I choose guitars, how I choose amps, how I choose whatever. I found that I have to, I need more guitars now, because I want these different sounds. Like it's just a try explaining that to my wife. She's like, surely they don't sound different. Like, well, yeah, they kind of do. So.
Well, at least at least you're in the position now that if you decide that you want a new sound, you can sit down and make it yourself, rather than
that's right.
all the rest of us that have to go out, spend the money, and then try and sneak it into the house.
Yeah. Well, I went through that stage, which is, but it's good. It was very interesting, because all I ever wanted to do back in the day was get a really distorted sound. And now I'm finding myself turning the distortion down, the gain down, because it sounds better. It's clearer, it's this sort of thing. And you evolve with that stuff, I never had a rat pedal until I started building guitar pedals. And I'm like, what was I missing out on?
Yeah.
For so many years? I never had a Les Paul. I always had like metal guitars, and I could never shred. So it was kind of useless. I had these guitars that were set up with floating tremolos and stuff, and now I'd rather have something that's just basic that I can just rock out on. So it's definitely an evolution, and I think the pedals are not any different. I'm finding each pedal I bring out is something that is definitely an evolution on what I'm thinking and where my mindset's at that time.
Awesome. As long as you don't get to the point where you're wearing cardigans all the time and just playing folk music and just making subtle overdrives.
Yeah, well, I'll make fun clothes for days, But that's just a Sunday thing, wearing a cardigan and playing folk music.
No, not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, definitely not, mate. I mean, it's music, right? I mean, and as long as it's got music behind it, I'm fully supportive of it. So
awesome. And just we've sort of been chatting for a while now, so we'll start to wrap things up. where would be the dream to see one of your pedals going forward? Obviously, you're saying that you've got one that's kicking around somewhere at Eddie Vedder's house, so that's a pretty big deal. But are there any bands that you would think would be within reach to get a pedal on the board in the short term, or maybe try and get it into a shop somewhere in the States, or what are the goals?
Yeah, that's a really tough question because it changes all the time. Matt Pike is one of those ones that has a lot of clout, right? I mean, I love Matt Pike. I love his guitar sounds. But getting into Matt Pike's hands is going to be hard because he's got that signature sound that already has, magic pedals, already do a pedal that, does his sound and that sort of stuff. The dude from Russian Circles would be phenomenal because I know he loves pedals, and there's an awful lot, but none that really stand out, in all honesty, because a lot of the musos that I listen to, that I've had a love affair with, like James Hetfield and Dave Mustaine and all of those guys, don't tend to use pedals. They've got someone out the back using the pedals for them, you know what I mean? So, it's that sort of thing. But I don't think I have any aspirations to have anyone in particular having it, but I would like to see my pedals on more tour boards. It doesn't matter who it is, but particularly in the States and Europe, being able to see them continue to be on boards and, be able to go to a show. If I was to go to a show and actually go to the front like most pedal nerds do and check out the pedal board and see that one of my pedals was there, it'd totally blow my mind. So, the clout's good. And, once you get past the ego part of, I was glowing for days when I found out that Eddie Vedder was going to have a pedal. But sort of once you get past that, as I said earlier, just the fact that people are going to use them to play live and to play music to people and not just have them in a bedroom is a really good thing. Jason from Goat Sound, bass player that was in Blood Duster, has a Russian plague and has recorded several bands with that Russian plague, and that sort of stuff carries tons of weight for me. Knowing that, out of all the pedals in there and all the pedal combinations in the world, that's, and all of the pretend pedals on Kempers, they've chosen, a humble builder from Melbourne. So that sort of stuff is phenomenal for me.
Well, that's a hell of a pedal too, that one. I've got a friend that's got a massive pedal board, and every time I go and plug into it, I always find my way back to the Russian plague. So it's
something that has to be played loud. It really needs to push some air, and the sustain is just so much fun. It's one of the things I can't play until the kids and the family are outside of the house, so I can actually turn the amp up, start shaking the walls. So yeah,
awesome.
Thanks, man. It's good.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously you'll be heading off to the US in the next couple of months. So best of luck with that. If anybody that's listening wants to find out more about your work or purchase some stuff, whether it's here or I guess if anyone's trying to get something overseas, how would they go about that?
Best option, if they want to see what's going on, check out the Instagram. It's just Kink Guitar Pedals, easy enough to find. Same with Facebook. If you're looking to check the webpage, check up some reviews, check all of the products, just kinkguitarpedals.com. It's all there. I'm easy to get a hold of. I tend to, respond super quick. So if anyone has any questions at all, hit me up. I take custom orders as well. I do custom printing in-house now, so the turnaround on that stuff's super quick. And that's, it's one of those things that has been quite popular in the last couple of months, getting custom stuff.
All right. Well, I'll let you go and enjoy your Friday night. But thank you so much for joining us. And best of luck. Hopefully we start seeing some more Kink pedals on some more boards. I know I've got one on mine, so hopefully it grows on to bigger and better things.
So, mate. I definitely hope so. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you reaching out.
No worries. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.